Nathan Nate Drake was a treasure hunter, a fortune seeker, as well as a deep-sea salvage expert, action pro, and professional thief. He believed himself to be a descendant of the famous English explorer Sir Francis Drake, although his official name is still unknown, though he decided to take the name Nathan Drake for himself. By the time he was 5, Drake's mother committed suicide and his father relinquished custody of him to the state. As a teenager, he would develop a deep fascination with the all-about voyager Sir Francis Drake, and while visiting an expo based around Sir Francis Drake, he would steal a ring to have once belonged to him, and after being chased and almost killed by a band of mercenaries, he would be saved by one professional thief himself, Victor Sullivan. Over many years, Sully would be very impressed by Nate's skills and potential and would become somewhat of a mentor and father figure to him. Nate and Sully would travel all around the world and take part in many adventures which included the search for El Dorado, traveling to the hidden city of Shambhala on the search for the Chintamani Stone, and would even travel to the Rubicon Desert in search for the Atlantis of the Sands. As it stands now, it appears that Drake will soon take part in his next and possibly final adventure, as he would be forced back into the world of thieves as he must embark on a globe-trot journey in pursuit of historical documents which have believed to have been connected to some pirate treasure. Whether or not Drake will survive this next adventure is unsure, but there is no question that in his own right, Nathan Drake is one of the greatest treasure hunters who ever lived. Now, due to the fact that there are many different interpretations of Lara Croft with multiple different backstories, I would just like to clarify that for this particular matchup, I will only be focusing on Lara Croft as she was from the 2013 Tomb Raider reboot. Although we really don't know much about this Lara's earlier life, it has been stated that she traveled with her parents on many of their archaeological expeditions. However, on one of these expeditions, her father and mother would mysteriously vanish, and since then they have been presumed dead. Afterwards, Lara would apply to the University College of London, and after graduating, she would set out on her first expedition on board the ship the Endurance to find the lost Japanese kingdom, Yamatai. While venturing through the Dragon's Triangle, the Endurance was struck by a violent storm and split into two, stranding everyone on board onto an isolated island. She would quickly discover that the island was overrun by mercenaries, and Lara would be forced to have to adapt to the qualities of survivor, which would also include having to learn how to kill, which is something that would permanently scar her and harden her psychologically. After spending days scouting around the island and killing off countless mercenaries, Lara would end up saving her friend from an ascension ritual to bring back the dead queen, Himiko, back to life. As Lara and her colleagues left the island, Lara was sure that this was only the beginning of her adventures, and that seems to be true, as she is about to take part in her next adventure later this year. We can only wonder what new challenges await this young Tomb Raider. Well, what's up again, viewers? Brian here at 3TR, bringing you my 12th in Season 1 Versus Series finale. And if you can't already tell, today I'll be breaking my own Versus Series rule by pitting two characters from two different franchises, but in this case, they are two of the most popular action-adventure franchises in all of video game history. So without stalling any longer, it's time to pit the treasure hunter with a mouth, Nathan Drake, against the survivor and Tomb Raider herself, Lara Croft. And we shall start by comparing them physically. Now for this matchup, I'll be using Nathan Drake as he was physically during the events of Uncharted 3 Drake's Deception. By this time, Drake was a well-built human male standing 5'10", being in his mid to late 30s, and is still well into his physical prime. Although Drake doesn't seem very muscular, he is undoubtedly strong, capable of climbing great heights for great durations of time without the use of climbing equipment. He has also been shown to be very quick on his feet, shown as he was able to outrun a speeding armored vehicle chasing him down a passageway. Drake was also been shown to be able to jump great distances, but nothing outside what an average well-built human could perform. However, Drake's most notable physical trait was his insane durability and high tolerance for pain. Drake has been shot countless times, knocked off of buildings, survived explosions, even survived the extreme heat of the Gobi Desert and the coldness of the mountains without proper clothing. This guy is practically a human tank, but just like any tank, he does have his limits, and if he takes the right shot at the right place, he will go down just as easily as anyone. Lara Croft is a young human female standing 5'6" at the age of 21. Lara took up gymnastics when she was younger, and as a result she is quite acrobatic and is in good fitness, capable of performing wall scrabbles to reach higher levels or swinging on cloth banners as if they were trapeze. Despite this, unfortunately, I'm not willing to say that Lara is anywhere near her physical prime, as she does lack in a few departments. Lara is not very strong, shown as she does not rely solely on her own physical strength and has to rely on using her climbing axe as her main way of climbing up structures, along with performing physical strikes. She is not very fast on her feet, but is capable for a young woman of her age. However, just like her opponent, she does seem to have a slightly higher durability and tolerance for pain than the average woman of her age. Over the period of a few days, Lara suffered multiple injuries, which include multiple fractures, being thrown around like a rag doll, and was even impaled earlier on. And although she was able to treat her injuries to a point, I do not believe that they were properly treated, which means by the end of the game, she would have had a broken body and was just barely able to get through this ordeal if it had not been for her personal will to survive. In short, Lara clearly has a heart of a survivor, but she is still young and still has a great deal of development until she reaches her true potential. I'm sure this round is pretty obvious to call. Lara is clearly in good shape for a young female, however her body at this point is relatively new to this whole combat thing. While Nathan Drake is a human tank who has spent years and has built his body to handle the challenges of combat and exploration, and has proven to be one of the toughest and most resilient treasure hunters of his day. And also, on a logical fact, men are generally physically superior in most traits in terms of strength, speed, durability, while women may just have flexibility on their side. But with all said and done, there's no question that Nathan Drake has the definitive edge in physical capabilities. In my opinion, Nathan Drake doesn't seem to have any highly toned skill sets that would classify him as a top-notch professional in any right. However, Drake has the strength and endurance of a man who regularly engages in physical exercises and is an exceptional hand-to-hand fighter, being able to take on multiple opponents at once. Although, again, I'm not willing to say he's a professional at hand-to-hand combat due to his physical strikes being nothing more but basic punches and grapples. Drake also has a vast knowledge of weaponry and is an excellent marksman, as it has been shown that he is capable of using any firearm ranging from pistols to RPGs. Drake also seems to have some experience at using stealth tactics, though they seem to be rather basic and only seem to work on unexpected opponents standing out in the open. In a whole, although Drake is not a very sophisticated combatant, he is a well-rounded combatant capable of handling himself in most combat scenarios and has the years of experience to prove it. Lara Croft would not be considered a trained combatant on any level, but instead her combative skill set is based on her ability to adapt and survive. Although Lara may lack the amount of combative experience due to the fact that she's only spent a few days on the island fighting off waves of mercenaries, she is a very fast learner and has been shown to be quite skilled at using firearms ranging from pistols and shotguns, and is seemingly exceptionally skilled with a bow, probably carrying over from archery lessons that she may have taken in her upbringing. Lara is unfortunately not very good as an up-close combatant and is more keen to using her climbing axe as her main primary up-close weapon. And although she may lack many up-close combative properties, she has been proven to be able to fight her way out of much bigger and stronger opponents, if only barely. However, Lara's greatest combative skill was her ability to use stealth tactics and the skill set of a hunter to maneuver around and attack opponents from unexpected ways. Although she is more than capable of engaging large groups of enemies in conventional shootouts, and certainly has the equipment to do so, by the end of the game, Lara was so familiar with her own combative capabilities that she was capable of dealing with single and large groups of enemies fairly quickly and decisively without having to rely on straight-up approaches. Lara may not nearly be as skilled as most of her opponents on the battlefield, but what she is more capable of is taking down her opponents when they least expect it. Believe it or not, this round is actually pretty close to call. There is no question that between the two of them, Nathan Drake is clearly the better head-to-head combatant, and his skill set leaves him perfectly prepared to deal with most combat scenarios. He is a skilled hand-to-hand combatant, a well-rounded marksman, and has used his skills over many years to overcome unbelievable odds. However, against Lara, his skill set really doesn't count for much at a distance. Lara may not have the long-term experience in combat as Drake does, but she is capable of dealing with almost everything Drake can bring against her. Let us not forget that Lara spent days killing hordes of mercenaries, which all mostly had the same combative skill sets and mindset as Drake, and she is more than capable of dealing with them all. It also comes down to Lara's ability to approach a scenario without using overwhelming force. Sure, she can easily engage in a long-standing shootout with opponents as Drake likes to, but using her skills as a hunter and a survivor, she has found an easier method to deal with these very scenarios when incorporating her specialized equipment and her own combative mindset to turn the odds quickly in her favor. What we have here is a fighter taking on a hunter. Lara can deal with everything that Drake can bring to this fight, but Drake has little to no experience dealing with someone who refuses to fight him in head-to-head engagements. And although Drake too has some skills at using stealth as well, they only seem to work on large groups of enemies and will only work for a very short time and are not nearly as refined as Lara's skills in this field. And it's for these reasons that I give Lara Croft the edge in martial skills. Now, due to the fact that Nathan Drake's armament of weapons is constantly changing all throughout his adventures, this makes it very difficult to clarify exactly what weapons Drake will be carrying at any particular time. So to make things easier, I have based Drake's armament of weapons based off the box art of Uncharted 3. In this case, Drake will be bringing 3 weapons into this contest. His primary weapon is the KAL-7 assault rifle, which is a fully automatic machine gun that carries a magazine of 30 rounds, in which Drake is able of carrying a maximum of 150 rounds for this weapon, and it has been described of having a low recoil and is reasonably accurate at medium ranges. His primary sidearm is the Para 9 handgun, which is a semi-automatic and carries a clip of 15 rounds, in which Drake is capable of carrying a maximum of 75 rounds for this weapon. Finally, Drake carries a maximum of 4 MK NDI hand grenades, which seem to have a 1 meter kill radius. In short, Drake's range of weapons is very suitable for his own combative needs, but nothing impressive. Okay guys, I'm gonna come out and state it right now. To save myself the trouble of having to script everything down, I'm just gonna run through each of her weapons on the screen and let you read what each individual upgrade gives Lara's a range of weapons. So please enjoy. Now, as you can clearly see, not only does Lara have more weapons, they have all been customized to a degree that not only makes these weapons easier for Lara to use, they also give Lara a great deal of overwhelming firepower and allow her multiple uses in combat. Her composite bow alone has more functions and multiple combative options than all of Drake's weapons combined, and even if these weapons were not upgraded, she would still have more options in combat, and this is before we've even reached how she's going to use these weapons in combat. On a side note, Lara does happen to carry a torch on her on all times, which is obviously meant to help her see in dark places like at night or in dark caves. But at the end of the day, there is no question that Lara Croft has a definitive edge in weapons. Over the course of Nathan Drake's treasure hunting career, he has been placed in multiple different scenarios that have put Drake's martial and physical skills to the test. However, undoubtedly, Drake's greatest combative tactic was his ability to adapt to almost any combat scenario, a sort of in the moment or a here and now tactic, as I like to call it. Drake has engaged multiple opponents in rainforests, battle-riddled urban cities, within the boundaries of ship graveyard, and has even taken part in scenarios involving moving vehicles including trucks, tanks, trains, and even in-flight airplanes. And despite even having the odds stacked massively against him, he has always managed to persevere. His adaptability can also be grounded with the use of common sense in battlefield scenarios. If he is spotted, he will immediately jump into cover and take shots at the opponent when they move in and out of cover. If he finds himself in an open area with lots of positions of cover, he can easily maneuver his way from cover to cover in order to get a better shot. Drake is also very capable at using stealth tactics. However, I would not say that they are very well developed, since they only seem to work on 1 or 2 opponents at a time, and this usually ends up with him getting spotted. Drake also has no problem relying on his own physical close quarters fighting techniques to dispatch an opponent if the opportunity presents itself. Lara Croft may lack combative experience, but the two things that Lara was able to count on over the course of her time on the island was her resourcefulness and her ability to have a keen sense of tactical foresight, allowing her to plan out her moves and know exactly what is the best course of action. Because she was facing enemies that had the advantages of numbers, firepower, training, experience, physical capabilities, Lara was forced to develop a non-straightforward approach in combat and had to rely on using any possible advantage before being discovered to her advantage, which would heavily involve the use of personalized and upgraded equipment along with her ability to use the environment itself to her advantage. And because of this, Lara would develop into more of a hunter rather than a straightforward fighter. Although Lara really did develop more like a hunter, relying on stealth tactics and planning out her moves ahead, this was not her only approach. She certainly is more than capable of relying on straightforward offensives and taking part in cover-based shootouts if the moment calls for it. It is, however, by the end of her journey, she would still favor a non-straightforward approach because it was simply made things easier for her to take control of the combat scenario. Lara's only real serious tactical weakness is that she found it really hard to recover if an opponent catches her off guard at close ranges, which is why a standard mercenary placing her in a chokehold attempting to kill her, or having a heavily armed, heavy machine gunner mere yards away from position made it very difficult for her to recover from. Lara may not be the greatest overall combatant, but she knows exactly how to use her skill set, martial abilities, and equipment to maximum effect. Right from the get-go, it is clear that Nathan Drake and Lara are complete opposites in terms of their own tactical approaches. Drake has experience and adaptability on his side, while Lara has foreplanning and equipment on hers. In terms of straightforward approaches, despite Lara having much better equipment, Drake is clearly more capable than Lara. And when it comes to non-straightforward approaches, Drake finds himself clearly outclassed by Lara. So what this edge comes down to is who is more effective at responding to the other's tactical approaches. And in this department, Drake is unfortunately at a colossal disadvantage. So as I said earlier, what we have in this matchup is a fighter taking on a hunter. Drake has been in far more combative scenarios that have all variety across different locations and circumstances, whether it was against multiple opponents at once or having to deal with an unexpected element. But he has absolutely no experience against a singular opponent who can attack him from almost any angle, has a larger collection of personalized, customized weapons at their disposal, and can use his own tactical approach against him. While Lara has plenty of experience dealing with multiple opponents at once who have more combative experience and were capable of adapting in combat to respond to her methods. Therefore, Drake is bringing nothing to this fight that Lara would not be able to deal with, and she can easily handle everything Drake is bringing without having to rely on straightforward offensives. Now, in Drake's defense, I am willing to admit that if we took Nathan Drake and Lara Croft and threw them in each other's games, that Drake would certainly have a much easier time with dealing with everything Lara had to go through, while I believe that there are a number of key scenarios from the Uncharted series that I believe Lara would not be able to survive due to her lack of combative experience. Drake is simply more capable of dealing with nearly any combat scenario except this one. Nathan Drake knows how to adapt in a combat scenario, but Lara Croft knows how to control a combat scenario, and it is for these reasons that I give Lara Croft the edge as a battle tactician. Now, I'm sure that many fans of both these amazing protagonists have debated for years on who was truly superior, and I'm sure that even after some people see this video, they will still continue to debate. But by the end of the day, there is no question that Nathan Drake simply cannot win against this version of Lara Croft. Drake unquestionably has everything he would need in order to take someone like this Lara Croft down. He is in physically better shape, he certainly has the skill sets in order to take her down if he can close the distance, and despite not nearly having enough firepower to match her, you can easily take down someone who has superior firepower, as Drake has done many times before. But the one thing that he lacks, and I really want to stress this, is he lacks the ability to think ahead and plan for the unexpected. As I said earlier, his entire tactical approach relies on reacting to the opponent and making things up as he goes, or until an opportunity presents itself. Now, I wish to share 3 clear examples of Drake's tactical mindset. In Uncharted 1, when Drake was captured by Eddie, he really didn't have a way to get out of that situation, and if it wasn't for Elena breaking him out of his jail cell, he most certainly would have been killed. In Uncharted 2, when Drake and Tenzin had encountered the tank at the village, at that very moment, Drake really had no idea of how he was going to take down this tank, and all he could do for several minutes was stay on the move and make himself a much harder target to hit. But this is not foreplanning, everybody, this is common sense. And it wasn't until much later on when, out of nowhere, he decided that he needed to find an RPG. So at that point, what made him think that he could even find an RPG in the village? What would have happened if he couldn't find one? And even later on, when he and Elena had to chase down Lajarfit's convoy in order to recover the dagger, Elena even asked Drake why he didn't just simply let her drive to begin with, and he simply responded by saying, "I didn't think that far ahead." Now, to quote quite possibly one of the greatest battle tacticians who has ever lived, Sun Tzu, who wrote The Art of War, "Know your enemy and know yourself, and in 100 moves, you will never be in peril." Despite not knowing anything about each other at first, Lara would quickly be able to figure out everything Drake is capable of fairly quickly and be able to formulate a simple plan to control, surprise, and decisively take Drake down. The only real advantage that Drake has in his corner is he is in physically better shape and has more combative experience, but to Lara, these aren't really advantages at all. All Lara Croft did for days is take out opponents that were in physically better shape than her and had more combative experience, and in some cases she was even able to take down opponents who had body armor along with superior firepower. The only real chance Drake would have at successfully taking down this version of Lara Croft is if he was able to sneak up to Lara and turn this fight into a close hand-to-hand combat fight, but thanks to Lara's hunter and like instincts and her vastly superior use of stealth maneuvers, Drake has not had a chance in hell of catching this Lara Croft off guard. Now, in Nathan Drake's defense, I do believe that he is more than capable of dealing with older interpretations of Lara Croft, since up until recently, Lara Croft's main approach in combat was to only rely on heavily fortified head-to-head assaults, and this is a maneuver that Drake is perfectly suited to deal with. Now let's set up this fight. Let's say that this takes place in the outskirts of a lost temple out in the rainforest. Lara Croft and Nathan Drake are both after an ancient artifact that they both want for their own personal reasons. Lara is sleeping when she suddenly hears a voice out in the distance. She quickly grabs her composition bow, her handgun, and her climbing axe, but decides to leave her assault rifle and shotgun on the ground, not wanting to deal with the extra weight. But she does happen to remove the scope off of the assault rifle. Using her climbing axe, Lara climbs up a tree to get to a better vantage point, and now using her unequipped scope, she scouts in the direction of the voice, and it is there that she sees Nathan Drake walking out in the open towards Lara's position. At this point, Drake is about 35 yards away and hasn't seen Lara yet. Not wanting to kill him outright, Lara pulls out her composition bow, draws a standard arrow, and fires an arrow a few feet in front of Drake. Drake immediately reacts and quickly jumps into cover and draws his KAL-7 assault rifle. "Leave now, Mr. Drake. I will not warn you again." Lara wanting to give Drake a chance to leave while he still can. But Drake, with his cocky attitude, simply responds, "Sorry, lady. I don't take orders from chicks." Drake attempts to blind fire his KAL-7, trying to cause some form of momentary distraction, but Lara is at a safe distance. At this point, Lara has dissected a plan in order to take out Drake quickly and quietly, but she knows that she needs to force Drake out of cover and get him to head towards her own position so she can execute her plan. So she decides she's going to pull one of her explosive arrows and fires it on the side of Drake's position. Drake spots the arrow quickly and manages to jump out of the way and moves into another covering position. Drake attempts to move further towards the left of Lara's position, but Lara pulls out a napalm arrow and fires it right in front of Drake, creating a wall of flames blocking his path, forcing Drake to head further into the rainforest towards Lara's position. At this point, Drake is a mere 20 yards away from Lara's position. He has also determined that Lara is somewhere further up ahead within one of the trees in order to give herself a better sniping position, and comes up with the idea of using 3 of his 4 grenades to create a momentary distraction while he runs further up ahead and hopes to get a shot at her while she is momentarily out in the open. Drake blindly throws 3 of his grenades in 3 different directions and quickly runs over to cover himself while carrying his KAL assault rifle in one hand and his last grenade in the other. However, as he makes his way closer to what he believes to be Lara's position, he is quickly hit in the side of his right leg with an arrow tied to a rope. The rope is suddenly pulled, causing Drake to fall to the ground, but despite being injured, he happens to catch a clear sight of Lara and immediately throws his last grenade at Lara's exact position and immediately opens up with his KAL-7 assault rifle in an attempt to get a clean shot before she disappears again. Drake manages to pull the arrow out of his leg, however he can't seem to walk on it very well, each step he takes with it being painful, but due to his toughness he's able to deal with it. As Drake limps in the general direction that Lara went, he notices a blood trail on the ground, and he determines that Lara must be injured and has gone to run away and take a momentary time to treat her injuries, which means that she must be close by. As Drake follows the blood trail, it just so happens to run past a dark cave and ventures away in a different direction away from the cave. Drake wonders if Lara may have run into the cave, but determines that she must have run past the cave to avoid trapping herself. So, Drake decides he's going to take advantage of the cave and goes inside and will wait until Lara comes back so he can catch her by surprise. As he enters the cave, he figures that he needs to go a good distance into the cave, that way to stay out of the light of the entrance, but as he does, his visibility diminishes quickly and Drake says, "Good thing I got Sully's lighter on me, now all I need is a torch." Suddenly, he feels something near his feet and it just so happens to be a torch. "Ha! This must be my lucky day," Drake replies as he lights up the torch. At that very moment, Drake hears what sounds like something being pulled with a string just a couple of yards behind him and realizes that it's Lara that had just set a trap. He realizes that his attempt to injure Lara back in the forest had failed, and what most likely had happened was that she had used her own arrow to cut herself, most likely in the hand, and used her own blood to make a trail to convince Drake that she went in one direction, then quickly wrapped up her injury, stopped the bleeding, and went into the cave, left her torch on the ground, and laid in wait for Drake to expose himself. And with his final words, "Oh shit," Drake is hit in the back of the head with an armor-piercing arrow and drops face down to the ground, dead. Lara picks up her torch and makes her way towards the ruins, leaving Drake's lifeless body in the cave behind her. I declare Lara Croft, the survivor, the victor. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the Season 1 finale of my first year Versus Series matchups, and please remember that this outcome was my own personal opinion, and feel free to share your thoughts in the comments down below. Do you agree that Lara's skills as a hunter would be too much for Drake to respond to, or do you think Drake would be able to catch Lara off guard and get a lucky shot? And please let me know which matchup this year was your own personal favorite, and like always, thank you guys for watching, you're awesome, and here's a sneak preview of my first matchup for Season 2 of my 3TR Versus Series.